Okay, so we're going to go a little bit bonkers and start standing. How's that? I'm going to let the doggy in. Come on, doggy. Go on, up. And feel free to stand on any surface you like. Go on, whoop, up to your bed. Good doggy. And just bring a little circling now. The menagerie is coming. The little kitten's coming now. Come on then, Tigger. You coming in? Circling the shoulders. Forwards, backwards, whatever you're having yourself. Both the same way, opposite ways. And then we're going to take the shoulders up to the ears on an inhale. And a long sigh out, lower them down further than they normally go. Breathing in, shoulders to the ears. Exhaling, long sigh out, longer than they normally go. Breathing in and breathing out. And then take your chin up to the ceiling and just notice what's available to you in range of motion without trying to go too far. And then bring your chin down and again notice what's available without pushing. And back to center, turning to look over one shoulder, just what's available without pushing. And back to center, over to the other shoulder, what's available without pushing. And back to center, one cheek down towards its shoulder, or one ear. And back to center and off to the other side. And back to center, interlace your fingers, turn your palms to the floor. And inhale your arms up to the ceiling. And just feel that pull on your heart and lungs, as well as on your muscles and bones and ligaments and tendons. So feel the internal body getting moved. And take a little tilt off to one side, feeling that lung getting pulled and lengthened. And the other side, what's happening to the heart? Is it getting squished or more space? And back to center. And on your next exhale, take your arms down behind your back to interlace and lift them up. Feel that nice opening across the chest. And that gentle squidge of the shoulder blades. And relax your jaw. And then bring your hands to your hips. Separate your feet about hips width apart. Bend your knees and do a little circling of your hips in one direction, aware of the direction you're going in. And change direction. Aware of the movement of the hips, the knees, the thighs, the pelvic floor, the belly and lower back. And then challenge your brain by doing a figure of 8 with your hips. Might not be so much of a challenge initially, but when we reverse, it certainly will. So trying to bring that figure of 8 into the hips, the waist, kind of a belly dancing vibe. And now the brain challenge is to reverse the figure of 8, and it'll probably be really clunky, but try and get it smoother, as if it might eventually meet the smoothness of the other direction. And then come back to stillness there and come up onto your toes of one foot and kind of snurfle around your toes. So you're kind of stirring a pot with your toenails or your toes, and try and go over onto the tops of the toes, onto the toenails as well as the balls of the toes, pads of the toes. A bit of a challenge for the toes. Change direction with that circling. And then do the same for the other set of toes, getting as much movement in. Some of that movement is a little bit uncomfortable, I know, especially if you've got any kind of arthritic bits going on. Change direction if that's okay to do. And then come back to center, and we're going to do some heel taps. If you worry about falling or anything, hold the wall. But we're basically jumping without the toes lifting off the floor and deliberately banging the heels. And if you're comfortable with that, you're going to fully jump. And again, if you're a bit freaked out, you can hold the wall. This will get us warm, get the heart rate up, and also stimulate our bones. If you don't like the 2-foot jump, you can do a sort of hopping on one foot to the other, or you can even hop on one foot, but that's more challenging than the double jump. And we'll just do another 10 or so. And let that go, and you'll probably feel a little warmer now, a little fizzy. And we're just going to bring our right foot behind us and bending the left knee, bring the right heel towards the floor for a little calf stretch, because that will have activated the calves a bit. Just a fairly normal, boring, like runners kind of stretch, and then swap sides. So the right foot forward, left foot a little bit back, left heel moving down towards the floor. And then come back up again. Now, do you happen to have either a yoga brick or a large book, like a Bible type sized book? Yeah, that's fine. The flat yoga bricks are okay. The thicker ones are better, the more brick shaped ones, because they give you a bit more height, but the flat one will be better. The thing is, we could do this with just the floor, so any height will help. So you're going to stand on it with your left foot. Actually, I'm going to do the right foot so I can show you how to use the wall, which is fairly self-explanatory. Feel free to be at the wall, but not to use it, and only to use it when you suddenly go, Jesus, I need it. And we're just going to draw figures of 8 with that foot swinging from the hip. Figures of 8 with the leg. The way you're going to avoid getting too uncomfortable in the standing leg is to try not to lock the knee of the standing leg. Figures of 8 from the hip rather than from the knee if you can. And change direction with the figures of 8 if you can, and that might be too much of a head wreck. I'd rather you do the movement and do it the easy movement than do the difficult movement and be a bit unable to get the swing. And then we're going to swing back and forth. Make sure you're not going to kick anything, but go as far as you can. And imagine you're moving from under the rib cage, as if your leg is attached under your rib cage, which in a way it is, with the psoas muscle going down there along the lumbar spine. And before we get too tired in that standing leg, let's swap. Fingers on the wall or not, depending on you, and start with figures of 8. A little tiny bend in the standing knee. And then change direction with the figures of 8 if you can at all. Notice your brain getting involved. And let's swing the leg back and forth, trying to swing right from the rib cage. You can let the spine move with you, really freeing up all the way from the ribs to the foot. Fabulous. And then let's take ourselves off that block and pop the block between your knees. And it can be the narrow setting of the brick-shaped block or the normal setting. I'll come closer to the screen. I can see you trying to see there. So the block is between my knees, just above my knee joints, actually, not between the knees themselves, just the bottom of the thighs, the thigh area closest to the knees, be a better way to describe it. We're going to do a little bit of work for the legs and the pelvic floor. So we're going to sit down a little bit, bend the knees a little bit, and squeeze the block and relax. If you've got a flat sitting block, it might feel a bit too narrow and you can't grab and squeeze, in which case add a cushion and relax and squeeze and relax. If you want to add the arms, we can bring the heels of the hands and the palms of the hands together, kind of cupped, and press the hands and press the block, and inhale to relax, and squeeze the knees and the hands, inhale to relax, squeeze, exhale, lift the pelvic floor, tone the tummy, inhale, relax, squeeze, lift the pelvic floor, tone the tummy, inhale, relax. 3 more, squeeze and press, lift to the pelvic floor, inhale, relax. 2 more, squeeze and press, inhale, relax. And last one, squeeze and press. Keep squeezing. And as you keep squeezing, stand up. Unbend the knees while you're still squeezing. Beautiful job. Release the hands. Keep squeezing the block and rise up on your toes. Keep squeezing and pulse the squeezing in for 5, pulsing in 4, 3, 2, 1. Bring the heels down. Keep a gentle squeeze. When we come up, we're going to twice more come up and do the pulsing. What I'd like you to think about is that when we're looking after pelvic floor strength, we need sustained hold, but we also need that kind of shock hold to train the pelvic floor to suddenly contract to stop ourselves leaking, say, if we're jumping off a wall or something. So what we're going to do is we're going to pulse the pressure on the block, and at the same time really try and engage with each inner pulse, a sharp, full-on inward and upward grip of the pelvic floor. So squeeze the block, rise up on the toes, and for each squeeze in this pulsing, the pelvic floor is going to shoot up. So breathing in and exhale, pulsing for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and inhale down. I bet everybody's face was going, rah, rah, rah. And we'll do that one more time. Inhale here. Exhale, lift up, squeeze, and pulsing, squeezing for 5, 4, sudden tone of the pelvic floor, 3, 2, 1, and come down, take the block out, and hold it in your 2 hands. You can hold it at its widest, doesn't matter which kind of block you have, and just bring it overhead, and bend the elbows and kind of push the edges of the block towards one another as if you're kind of trying to squash it. So push it together, push, push, push. Just tuck your chin a little bit, or you might find you're straining your neck. Push, 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 lengthen the back of the neck. Inhale and exhale, bring it down. You can cast that to one side for the moment. And just take a moment to notice your body. Some muscles that we don't often get in touch with at the beginning of our class that we've connected to today. So you might feel a little different than after some of our other hellos that we say, these engagements that I bring you through often of the whole muscular body before we do anything fancy. And then bouncing up and down a little. This isn't heel taps, it's bouncing up and down. You can let your arms hang. I'm just tying up my hair, which why mine aren't hanging. But for you, just let a bit of sense of tension out through the fingers and the arms. And if you've got any sounds, to let out any stressy sounds, stressy thoughts, let them out. Couple more. Shake it off. Last one, breathe in. And then inhale, swoop the arms up. And exhale, swoop them back as you bend your knees as if you're about to dive into a swimming pool. Straight spine if you can. Inhale, swoop up, straight legs. Exhale, swoop down and back, bend the knees, getting ready to dive. Lift through the tail. Inhale, up. And exhale, ready to dive. Long spine so that you're not crumpling the front of the back, front of the spine. One more. Inhale, up. And exhale, ready to dive. We're going to stay in this little diving position in terms of the spine position. Just tuck the chin very slightly. And take the left hand to the outside of the right knee, but not pulling, just resting. And take your right hand behind your back. And draw your right shoulder back and down towards the opposite hip, as if you're trying to touch your left back hip with your right shoulder blade. And then turn to look to the right, and your chest will be open a little to the right. So it's a little mini twist. Breathing, tone in the pelvic floor and the belly. And next inhale takes you back to center and brings the right hand to the outer left knee, the left hand behind you. And without any twist at all first, just bring the left shoulder back behind you, and if you're trying to touch it to your right back of pelvis. And then just turn your head to see the shoulder. So you don't have to twist any further than that. Just bring a little mobilization into the breast, the pectorals, the upper rib cage. That's all. Nothing major. Inhale back to center when you're ready. And as you exhale, come forward a little more. If you've osteoporosis, keep neutral spine. If you don't have osteoporosis, you can hang upside down. Keep the knees gently bent and lift your tail. And sway your bum side to side, whatever position you're in. A little mooch for the hamstrings and buttocks. And a little reminder for pleasure, for sensuality, and for chasing what feels good to your body. And then, if at all possible, if it doesn't feel like too big an ask, could you step yourself into face down dog? And you're really welcome to hold the edges of your mat. I find that quite a nice achievable hand position if you've got achy wrists, or if you find it hard to have your palms on the floor. And also it can help to open the shoulders away from the ears. Sometimes when the palms are flat, the shoulders might creep up around the ears. And send some weight up and back through your tail. Knees are slightly bent, elbows are slightly off, not elbows, heels are slightly off the floor. And you're breathing. Inhale here. And as you exhale, bring your knees to the floor. We're not going to stay on our knees for very long, but we'll be back and forth to our knees. So if you want to put a folded blanket where your knees are going to be landing, then this would be a good time to do it. A little bit of strength work here, for which you can go on your palms or your elbows, because it's pretty full on. So if you find your wrists and palms don't like being on the floor, go down to your elbows. Tuck your toes. Actually, let's use that block again. I was going to ask you to imagine the block between your knees, but sure, we've been using it. Let's pop it between the knees. And again, the very flat block might be too tricky. So you might want to do a cushion between your knees instead. But it would need to be quite a fat cushion if you have one, a substantial one. Yeah, fold it up exactly. And then grip the block and float your knees a millimeter off the floor. Try and keep neutral spine, head in line with the spine, navel to the spine, lifting up through the pelvic floor. This is not easy. This is work in the thighs, the core, including the pelvic floor, and that's the intention. Inhale here, and as you exhale, can you come up to dog with the block between your knees? Although for some of you that will be too much in the hamstrings. The knees can bend slightly, the tail can lift, and if you are on your elbows, you can do elbow dog, which is a little trickier for the shoulders. That means that you don't have to be on your wrists. Inhale here. Exhale, come down to all fours again. And come back into your what's called bear pose. So you're gripping the block and you're lifting your knees a millimeter. You can be on your elbows as I am now, but it tends to make us sag down in the ribs a bit more when we're on the elbows. So be careful to zip up the front of the body as if you're trying to touch your back with your belly and your ribs and your chest, and then come down. Take the block out if you have it, or the cushion or whatever, and come into a long child's pose with your bum high and your arms ahead of you. And if you're lucky like me, you've got a purring cat under your chest. And breathe. Oh, you're okay, Tigger. You're leaving. And then come forward onto your belly, please. And come up into maybe Sphinx. And if Sphinx feels a bit too high, you can bring, I'm going to have to stay here now because the cat's sitting on me. So you're going to have to do your own yoga practice. If Sphinx is too high, bring your forehead onto your hands. And Sphinx may be perfect or Sphinx may be too low, in which case you can bring your arms wider and lift up the elbows as long as you don't squash your shoulders to your ears. That looks fine. Pubic bone down, zip up the lower abdomen, and try and rest on your kneecaps rather than rolling to the inside or outside of the legs. Shoulders back from the ears, head slightly inclined down rather than trying to look forward. And with that slight downward tuck of the chin, look over your right shoulder, see if there's a cat on your back, and then look over the other shoulder. And back to center. And come slowly down and roll onto your left elbow and left hip. And bend your left knee under you and take your right foot up behind you, either holding the cuff of your trousers, the cuff of your socks, or your ankle. And try to flex your ankle rather than passively pulling your toes towards your head and pulling on your foot. Try and hold the ankle, flex the ankle, and pull the foot away from you so that you get a little shoulder stretch. Notice the angle of your neck and see what suits any neck trouble the best. So how do you get most comfortable in your neck here while you're offering your shoulder, neck, the fascia of that region all the way down to your ankle, through the trunk. A bit of space and movement. How can you reduce any impact on the neck, any negative impact on the neck? And then we're going to take that right knee up in front of us onto the floor and give a little massage to your left, right thigh, hip, buttock area, maybe down to the knee if you feel the need. Or maybe you feel more need up around the glutes and the hip. You decide. Maybe you need towards the back of your pelvis. So when we have pelvic floor tension or asymmetrical tone in the pelvic floor, it can translate as discomfort into the hips and the lower back. So we're doing a little bit of pelvic floor theme here and a good bit of isometric contraction for the sake of a variety of things, but the pelvic floor in particular, we're going to spend some time with this evening. And we're going to roll to the other side. So roll to your right side, come up onto the elbow, or you can go low down on the side of your head on a flat arm. Bend the right knee up a little and take the left foot behind you, holding the cuff of your trousers, the cuff of your socks, or your ankle, flexing the ankle and draw the knee backwards, the foot away from you. Try not to bow the ribs or belly forward. You need a little tone in the pelvic floor here to stop you kind of flopping all over the place. Make sure your neck is in an angle that makes it least impacted while you have this lovely, quite intense sensation from the shoulder all the way to the knee at the very least. Lots of breath. And then when you're ready, take your left knee onto the floor in front of you and a little massage of the left knee, thigh, hip, buttock, back of the pelvis, wherever you need that touch. And it can be stroking, gentle touch, or can be more robust self-massage. That's also up for grabs. And then when you're ready, come onto your belly again, please. Down onto your forward onto your hands. Inhale here. And as you exhale, lengthen and raise the right leg and bring it slightly across the midline as if you're going to try and put your right foot over your left heel. And squeeze the glutes a little. And inhale, bring it back to neutral so it's over the floor where it began. And exhale, bring it to the floor. Inhale again. Exhale, lengthen and lift the left leg. Inhale, and as you exhale, bring it across the center toward, so it's hovering over, the left foot is hovering over the right foot. Squeeze the glutes. Inhale here, bring the leg back, and exhale it down towards the floor, to the floor. Inhale again. Exhale, press the pubic bone down and elevate your face and chest off the floor. Soften your shoulders back and down. Keep the pubic bone pressed in. Inhale again, or press down rather. Lift the navel to the spine. Exhale, elevate both legs if you can. Straight legs if possible. And very slowly cross the ankles. And open out again. And exhale, cross the ankles the other way, so the other leg is underneath. We'll do that once more. Inhale here. Now try and do that using the glutes, using your buttock muscles to cross one foot under the other. Inhale wide. And exhale, cross one foot under the other, using the glutes. Inhale wide. Exhale down. You might need a good rest. And let your bum wobble side to side, as if you're trying to unstick the flesh of your lower back and buttocks off the bones. And then tuck your toes, your lovely toes, your 10 tiny toes. Lift your knees and push the heels back towards the wall behind you. And then bring the knees down. Bend your 2 knees. Now, if you're getting cramp or something, you might want to go back to lying on your side and doing those single holds of the legs. But if you can, we're going to come up to the elbows higher and just take hold of the right ankle on its own. Leave the left leg floating there. It's the floating leg that might get the cramp, to be honest. So if the floating leg doesn't like it cramp-wise, then bring it down. Flex the ankle of the leg you're holding, or you're holding the cuff of the trousers, and bring the heel back away from your bum so that you're lifted a little higher from the floor, toning the pubic bone down into the floor, lifting through the lower abdomen. Let that right shoulder get a nice little stretch, and maybe bring your chin down a little so you get extra stretch on the back of the neck. And breathe. And slowly release the 2 legs down. Take a little rest in Sphinx, or even down with your forehead on your hands. You might need to go a little lower. Yeah, lovely. Breathing. And then again, when you're ready, come up to your elbows. Take the 2 feet up and reach back to hold the left ankle or cuff of the trousers. Flex the ankle and pull the heel away from your bum. Bring your chin down if that feels okay. Pubic bone presses down, lower abdomen zips up, navel is drawing in and up a little. Breathing. Inhale here. And exhale to rest down onto your hands. And take a little wobble in the bum again. And then bring your knees a little wider if you can. Lift your feet and bring your heels together, but your toes apart, as if you were holding a cup of tea on the soles of your 2 feet. Now this is a tricky one. This is a Pilates move. So if it's too much for you, you're going to keep the knees on the floor and not do the elevation. So if you can, press the heels together, lift through the pelvic floor. Inhale to relax. If possible, press the heels together, lift through the pelvic floor, and lift your thighs up as if you're keeping the soles of the feet parallel to the ceiling. Keep that cup of tea on your feet. Inhale down and relax. Exhale, squeeze the heels, lift the thighs, keep the feet parallel to the ceiling so it's a straight up motion. This is not easy. Inhale down, relax. 3 more if you can, or stop sooner if you need to. Press the heels, lift through the pelvic floor, lift your cup of tea up to the ceiling. Inhale, relax. Remember, you can do this without lifting the thighs. Exhale, press the heels together, lift the thighs, or don't if it's too much. Navel to spine, inhale down. And last time, press the heels, lift through the pelvic floor, lift the thighs, lift the cup of tea to the ceiling. Inhale down and rest your legs. Wobble your bum side to side. No messing there now, lots of work. And then tuck your 10 lovely toes and bring your hands under your shoulders. Inhale. And as you exhale, push up onto all fours and push back into child's pose or long child. So if you've osteoporosis and your hips are free enough to bring your bum to your heels without you rounding the spine, that's fine to bring your bum to your heels. But if you do have osteoporosis and you can't bend enough at the hips so that when your bum comes down, you're already rounded, then you need to elevate the bum and put maybe a block under your bottom. And then if the head coming to the floor also creates a rounding in the spine, with osteoporosis, you should put your hands under your head. We're trying to maintain a flat spine. Now, it's very important here, particularly because we're going to try and use this as a relaxation tool. If child's pose simply isn't for you, lie on your back and bring your knees up and maybe just hold the backs of your thighs. Or just lie on your back. And we're going to inhale and imagine the breath traveling down to the pelvic floor. And as you exhale, imagine that the breath is exiting out through a soft pelvic floor. Inhale, imagine a balloon of breath going down to the pelvic floor. And exhale, imagine the breath sighing out through the pelvic floor. One more of those. Breathing in, expanding the pelvic floor. And exhaling, imagine that the breath is traveling softly out through the pelvic floor. And then we're going to come up to kneeling. And if you do have a block, or I've got this mad chair that I use, this rolly chair that helps you can do kneel or stand or sit on it. A stool, a chair, a block at the front of your mat, so that when you do a lunge, you can bring your hands onto something a bit higher than the floor. We're going into quite a long lunge. Fab. Yeah, and if you've got that tall stool, you can probably get away with using the bars under it. Like if your stool feels too high and there's bars under it, you can use them. Or if the stool is high and your hands are on it, you can just bend the elbows to make yourself lower. So whatever level you need. And what we're going to try and do is clock the right heel inward. So we're not actually turning the foot, but we're thinking the right heel into the center line, and you should feel a bit of engagement along the outer right leg. Now that's one that if you're inclined towards cramping, you might get a bit of cramp in the hamstrings. So don't clock that heel in if you're cramping in the hamstrings. And then we're going to inhale to send the buttocks back and the right knee is straightening, and we're forgetting about the clocking when we go back to straight. And when we bend again, we're pulling the heel in towards the center line and feeling that muscular action on the leg. Inhale, straighten that right leg, or as close to straight as you can manage. And exhale, clocking the heel in, feeling that muscularity of the right leg. And then we're going to tuck the back toes and lift the back knee. And we're going to clock both heels in. So the left heel is clocking into the center, the right heel is clocking into the center, but there's nothing very visual happening. And feel that as very deep muscular connection to the inner legs, maybe into the pelvic floor. Breathing. This is very challenging for 5, 4, 3, 2. Slowly lower the knee. Undo the clocking and straighten that right leg again. This time, if you can, bring your right toes up to the ceiling, if that suits, and sitting back a little and breathing. Neutral spine as best you can. And then we're going to take that same leg, the right leg, out to the side. Now we've done this movement quite a lot before. I'm just going to go sideways on. You just have to imagine I've got my stool here. So the right leg is out to the right completely if you can. I'm going to go back to my stool and we're rocking back and forth. This is one you'll be familiar with now. Getting into that hip, feeling the movement of the pelvic floor. Lots of breath. And the next time you come forward, bring that knee to the floor and step the left foot forward instead into a pretty long lunge. And then imagine that you're trying to turn the toes out to the left and the heel into the center. Don't let them actually move. They're super glued, but you're thinking that direction, and see if you can help your pelvic floor here not to bear down. So the downside about doing this kind of strong work is that even though the intention is to engage some musculature, there can be a downward pressure due to the demands on the core muscle. So for some of us, we'll have to consciously lift the pelvic floor, and for some, it'll just happen. And then we're going to inhale, let go of that clocking and straighten the left leg. The toes can stay towards the floor or lift as you see fit or as you enjoy. Inhale forward, clocking the knee in as you go, or the heel in rather, as you go, to feel that extra muscular action in the thigh, hip area, buttock. And let go of the clocking as you tip back to straight leg-ish. And bending, clocking the heel in. Tuck the back toes, lift the back knee, and you're clocking both heels into the center line. Neither of them will look like they're moving, and you're thinking about tone in the pelvic floor, closing the walls of the vagina, drawing up the lower abdomen, softening the shoulders back from the ears, lengthening the back of the neck, clocking the heels in for another 5, 4, 3, 2, come slowly down on the knee, letting go of that clocking, and straighten the left leg again with the toes now up to the ceiling if you can. You don't have to do this one. If you don't like this, just go straight on to the other one, which is having that leg out to the left. Couple of breaths here. And as and when you're ready, take that left leg directly out to the left, crashed into the wall. Not great sometimes in our home spaces, we don't have all that space. So straight out to the left, and we're rocking back and forth. And feel that movement in the tissues that have just been worked very strongly. And now we're being soft and kind to those tissues. And then when you're ready, bring your knees back in line. Now, depending on the solidity of what you've got your hands on, if it's not solid, you're going to bring your hands to the floor and do a normal dog. But if it is solid and you feel like the feeling or seeing what the feel of a more elevated dog would be, feel free to do that. It's no big deal just because it's there. Breathing. You might find a certain degree of freedom that you don't normally feel, and you might suddenly go, oh, Jesus, I'm never doing a normal dog again. This is so delicious. Or maybe you don't need it. Maybe it's kind of boring. As you're here in this dog, whichever one you're doing, could you picture a hollowing out between your pubic bone and your navel, as if all the organs of your pelvis have disappeared and there's a vacuum there, or they've all fallen down up to your rib cage and all the intestines are falling up to the rib cage. A hollowing out of the lower abdomen. Inhale there into the rib cage if you can. Let the rib cage expand with your inhale so that that lower abdomen stays kind of empty, hollowed out. And then when you're ready, come down to your knees and take a little rest. It might be child's pose, it might be kneeling up. Particularly rest your arms that have worked quite hard incidentally. Lots of breath. Relax your jaw and your shoulders. So you may, from the last little instruction or little suggestion that I was giving you for that lower abdomen, you may be guessing what's coming next, given that our theme is kind of pelvic floor-ish. Uddiyana Bandha, that vacuum in and up of the lower abdomen, which has great research around it for pelvic floor health. So we're gonna, it's hard for me to, to know online how you're getting on with this, but let's give it a go. So give me a wave, any of you who I haven't taught Uddiyana Bandha to, this sort of suction in the lower abdomen. I'm not quite sure if you've all done a little go of it. Okay, so there, I'll teach it afresh then, and that's no harm for everybody else. So Uddiyana Bandha is a cleansing practice which essentially creates a vacuum in the lower abdomen, which comes in and up under the rib cage. And it's researched in the West in a practice called hypopressives, where they see that this vacuum, this no breath, this apnea, as they call it in the West, has really good benefits for particularly prolapse towards the front of the pelvic floor, for urinary incontinence, that kind of thing. So I'm going to show it to you, I think is the best thing, and then teach it. So forgive me if you've seen it before, but it does involve me showing off my belly. And what I want you to notice, I'm just trying to see what angle you'll get the best light. This is probably the best way, and I can't be sure you'll get the light or the right view of it, but I'll do my best. So I'm going to be completely exhaling, and then you're going to see my belly suctioning in and up. I won't be able to talk at the time. I wonder if this salt lamp would give enough light to shine on my belly. That's a bit weird. It might actually help. Let's see. Yeah, I think that probably helps. So I'll keep talking until I can't talk anymore. And when I stop talking, you'll hopefully see a kind of sense of my belly drawing in and up under my rib cage. So I'll do it one more time. Hopefully the visuals will be there. That might be better here as well. I look like I'm about to pee on this radiator. Pushing the breath out. So what you may have noticed was that I didn't breathe in until I had relaxed my belly again. So I let my belly swell out before I breathed in. Otherwise, you get this kind of shock of an inhale. You probably won't get it today if you've never done it before, but we'll play around with it. So what I'm going to ask you to do is two ways to find it. One is to kind of almost squat as if you're about to have a big poo. Or another way to do it, if that's too tiring, is to sit on the edge of a chair to make that same shape. So you're kind of leaning forward. I find it's helpful, this rounded arm position, the kind of like lad in the pub position for the arms is quite helpful. Now, eventually you'll be able to do this in all sorts of different positions. So don't feel that this is like the only way of doing it. So before we actually try and do it, in this position, bring your hands to your ribs. And after you exhale, try and hold the tummy toned and breathe into the ribs instead. So you're pushing the hands out. And then exhale normally. So we're not trying to do the apnea, the vacuum. We're just trying to breathe into the ribs, keeping the belly toned. So that movement of pushing the ribs out is one way of getting that vacuum. And the way you do that is after you've completely exhaled every single drop, you try and expand the ribs out to the side as if you're taking a breath in, but you don't actually breathe. And that can sometimes just create that inward and upward vacuum. Another way of doing it is actually to consciously pull the belly in and up. And a last way of doing it is to hold your nose and try and breathe in, but obviously you can't breathe in because your nose and mouth are closed. So it's taking a false breath basically after the exhale. So let's tip forward, choosing your options, whether to, after you've completely exhaled, to hold your nose and try and breathe in without success, or to expand the ribs as if you're breathing in but don't breathe in, or to suction the belly inward and up under the rib cage. So inhale together. And then a long full exhale. Sometimes I shh the exhale out, or you can just exhale normally, but it has to be really empty. There's no hope of you doing this if you don't fully exhale. And then your false inhale, maybe holding the nose and pretending to breathe in or expanding out through the ribs and create that vacuum. Remember to relax your belly before you breathe in and take a break. If you don't get it, don't worry, you'll get it eventually. But when you get it, you feel a little lock or a little tension in the throat as well. And that's one of the reasons we need to let the belly relax before we breathe in. So the glottis kind of naturally starts to lock as well. After a couple of recovery breaths, we're going to exhale again. If the first way didn't work for you, try a different way or try it again. So you're fully exhaling, fully exhaling, fully. Then hold the nose, try to breathe in without breathing in, and think the belly up and under your rib cage. Then relax the belly and then breathe in. And give me a little thumbs up if you kind of felt like the beginnings of some sort of sensation of it. That's a bit of a no. Oh, a big down, big thumbs down. Okay. So I would say all of you could be a little more upright. You might be a little rounded in the spine, and we can do it even maybe completely upright. So let's try completely upright and try a different technique than you just used. So maybe it's about choosing to activate the muscles of the belly inward and upward. It's quite, it's a choice. If I take the false breath, the holding of the nose and the expanding of the rib cage, and I take that false breath, there's still a little moment where I have to work to try and create this inward and upward, almost like you've been winded is kind of the motion of it, but not with rounding the spine. So give it another couple of goes. Long breaths in. It's the full exhale is incredibly important. So I learned it tilting forward. Tilting forward may not work for you. So exhale, exhale, exhale. Try the holding the nose. Pretend to breathe into the ribs, and then try and support it by this conscious pulling up and under. Relax the belly and breathe in. If you're feeling something building here in the throat, you're getting there. Give me a thumbs up, down, or sideways. Is that sideways? A little bit of a wobble, a possibility. Or interrupt if you like. You got a sideways, Margaret? So a bit of a, you're not quite sure. Okay, so let's go back to the face down dog, because sometimes you can feel it coming on in face down dog all on its own. So if you're in dog and you really, really, really lift through the tail, like big time, so much so that you get an arch in the spine, and start to slide the feet slightly back as you continue to lift the tail, you might start to feel this hollowing out between the pubic bone and the navel. I don't recommend you try your Uddiyana Bandha here, but you might get the feel of this hollowing out and everything traveling up under the ribs. And then when you're ready, roll yourself or walk yourself up to standing, not a roll with osteoporosis, straight spine with osteoporosis. Come up to completely vertical. And bring your hands onto your lower abdomen so that the thumbs are just under the navel and the fingers are just above the pubic bones. And we're going to do a little Kapalabhati breathing, which gives us a very similar effect to Uddiyana Bandha. So with Kapalabhati breathing, you're snorting the breath out of your nostril while this, nostrils plural, while this part of your belly suctions in and up. So it's like that part of the belly is doing the snorting, is pushing the breath out. Then you relax the belly to breathe in. You might need to blow your nose. This would be good for warming you up as well. And you might notice this pull on the pelvic floor. Again, that takes a while to get. Once you think you've got some of the movement of the abdomen, take the hands away and see if you can make it happen without the hands. Even if you can't get the inward and upward motion, get the pull of the belly back, forcing the breath out by muscular action and letting the breath in naturally. Take a little breath, blow your nose, a little rest rather, blow your nose if you need to. And we're going to come down to sit on the floor. You can practice Bandha another time. It's not something you particularly need to warm up for, but just be very careful not to shock the spine in a rounded position if you have osteoporosis. So if you're trying Uddiyana Bandha, you need to make sure that the spine is neutral. So seated on the floor, I would recommend that you sit on a yoga block or a folded cushion or something, and sit towards the edge of it with your knees bent, and hold the backs of your thighs. And tilt back a little with neutral spine, so not rounding the belly into the back, not rounding the spine. And come up onto your toes if you can. And reach your arms out front. And if you tend to get cramp, by the way, up on your toes, you'll probably get cramp in your calves, so maybe lower onto the balls of the feet or indeed the heels. And try and snort out in 3 quick snorts. So 3 quick snorty out breaths with the lower abdomen engaging. And relax to breathe in. Soften the shoulders, and 3 more. Inhale to relax, soften the shoulders, and 3 more. And then if you find that, well, let's take a little rest actually. So we're going to do that again with a slightly more difficult physical position. And if you can't get this sense of the belly doing the work, just trust that if you're snorting with that force, the belly and pelvic floor are having to do some work. So this is a breath practice that has similar positive effects for the pelvic floor as the Uddiyana Bandha. So if you found that easy enough, come up and lift the feet, but you need to remain neutral in the spine. So try not to round. Maybe touching the knees together will help you. Maybe that's not helpful. And 3 snorts. Inhale, snort. Trying to let the belly do the work. Inhale and snort. And relax down. Take a little breather. And then bend your right knee till your foot is in line with your heel. And come onto the outer edge of your left foot. I'm going to turn this way actually. Outer edge of your left foot. And take your left hand behind you. And we're going to reach the right arm up to the ceiling. And if your wrist will allow, exhale to lift your pelvis up off the floor. Draw your 2 shoulders back from your ears and press your right foot into the floor and try and engage your glutes. Come down when you're ready and swap sides. Bend the left knee. Go to the outer edge of your right foot. You can do this on your right elbow, lifting up, left arm to the ceiling, and try to press the left foot down and squeeze the glutes and lift the pelvic floor, shoulders away from your ears. And come slowly down. This is a bit trickier, which is a weird thing, to have the 2 feet on the floor and the 2 hands with the fingers pointing back. Again, you can come down to your elbows or even lie down on your back for this because it's tricky on the wrists. But that's kind of one of the aims of it. Inhale here and exhale, lift the pelvis so that you're creating a tabletop position. And imagine holding that block or cushion between your knees. I like to look forward. I can't let my head go back. It's just too spooky, too uncomfortable. You choose. Coming down, if you were on your hands, try angling them slightly differently, just for a different wrist challenge. But be aware that the wrists are delicate and we don't want to overload them. So if it feels a bit spooky, turn the fingers differently. Inhale here. Exhale, press down through the feet to lift up. You can, if you want a bit of extra effort in the glutes, clock the heels towards each other without them moving again. Breathing, toning the pelvic floor. Buttocks, inhale and exhale down. Come and have a little hug of your thighs or knees. If when you hug your knees, you go very rounded in the spine, then you want to hug the thighs. But if you don't have osteoporosis, you can go into a big round ball and hug right in and bring your head to your knees. Lift through the sternum if you're staying upright, if you're not rounding into a little ball. And breathe. Inhale here, come up to vertical if you're rounded. And as you exhale, straighten the right leg, bring the arms up to the ceiling, just hover the right leg. And inhale back down again. Exhale, left leg, arms, just hovering the left leg, stay tall in the spine. And inhale back. One more on each side. Exhale, long, hovering. Inhale back. And exhale, long, hovering. And inhale back. Carefully bring yourself onto your back. So that might mean rolling to your side or lowering yourself down to elbows, spine, head. And walk your feet slightly further away from you than they've naturally landed. And come up onto your heels. And push the floor away from you with your heels as you lift your bottom from the floor. And you're in a bridge pose just on your heels. Slightly weird. Breathing. And here, could you think about Uddiyana Bandha? So you may not want to try it here, but you might find you can access it. As you exhale, let all the organs drop down to your spine and cascade under your ribs. And as you don't inhale, expand your ribs out to the side as if you are inhaling. Before you breathe in, relax your belly, and then breathe in and lower slowly down. So you may or may not have got a bit more of a sense of that pressure inward and upward under the rib cage. Take a moment. We're going to do that once more just in case it helped, and because there's plenty of you that are watching the video as well, so I'm not going to know how you're getting on. But in case it helped, we'll do it once more. And then when we breathe in, we'll turn it into a more traditional yoga bridge. So walking your feet a little away, the toes come up, just creates a little more muscular effort. And exhale, lift the spine and the bum, and keep exhaling as much as you can until you're absolutely, physically, completely and utterly empty of all breath. The organs have fallen down to your spine and up under your rib, and then a false inhale. Excuse me, relax the belly before you breathe in. I overdid it there, which is why I coughed. And then bring your feet a little closer to your bum. Bring your thumbs under your back, hook your thumbs. Tuck your shoulder blades down and in and under. With osteoporosis, lift your chin a little and then lift your chest up towards your face without pulling your chin to your chest. For everybody, don't pull your chin to your chest, and with osteoporosis in particular. So you want to maintain a fairly neutral neck, but we're looking for quite a deep back bend, which is pretty safe for most osteoporosis, to lift that chest, press the arms down. Grab an imaginary block between your knees so that you're not falling the knees out. Think of lifting in and up through the pelvic floor, maybe engaging the glutes. You might feel this tomorrow or after doing this practice, the glutes have been engaged maybe more than we normally do. Press the floor away from you with your arms and feet. Breathing. And lower down, and if you can, land on your arms so that your palms are flat down under your pelvis with the thumbs just touching. So don't hook the thumbs because that'll hurt. And if you feel like fish pose, you're going to extend the legs out long, or you can keep them bent. And first is a possibility that may be plenty for many of you. First is just to be here with the arms squished under the body. Plenty extension in the spine. For some, you may like to simply press the elbows down and lift the chest. And for others, you may like to tone the belly and pelvic floor, lift the chest and shoulders, and deposit your head up on towards the top of the head. So your chin is lifting and you're resting on the top of the back of your head, not the tip-top crown of your head, but the top of the back of your head, or the back of the top of your head, that curvy bit where you go from the back to the top. Traditionally, this would be done on top of the head, but I think it's too much for most necks. Press through the elbows, lift the chest, barely any weight on the head, lots of weight on the elbows and pelvis and hands.
stay as long as you fancy. Some people love this, and I see them staying for a long time. And others of you may need to lighten the weight of your head. Try not to drag it on the floor as you lay it down again. And when you feel ready, take your arms out from under your body. And though we're not finished, just rest really thoroughly for a moment. Tuning in with your pelvic floor. Had a lot asked of it so far. We're going to give it a kind of more pleasant time now, not so much trying to desperately tone it, but just getting some more mobilizing movement into it. So we're going to bend the knees. I'm just going to put this under me because it's kind of chilly now on the floor. Feel free to get blanketed or whatever because we won't be getting any warmer. We're going to do this movement practice and then a restorative pose. So when you're ready to bend your knees, do. And you can bring your hands onto your pelvis for extra connection to the movement of your hips if you like to, or you can have them anywhere you want. And just bring your pelvis for a little walk. You might be able to see my hands as an indication of what my pelvis is doing. It's like one hip is sliding down towards its foot, and then the other hip is sliding down towards its foot. Or it might be that you feel it more that one hip is sliding up towards its armpit and the other hip is sliding up towards its armpit. So it's a sideways up and down movement of the hips rather than this kind of thing, which is hips side to side. So an up down movement, sliding movement of the pelvis on the floor. And notice how that feels in the tissue of the pelvic floor, the vulva, the vagina, the perineum, around the urethra, around the anus, around the entire pelvic floor, close to the groins as well. So your pelvic floor really encapsulates the entirety of the base of the body. It attaches to the tail, the sitting bones, and there are parts where you may feel deep in the groins and the pubic bones. So it's a big, broad, layered, three-layered muscle with fibers running in different directions. And there's lots of bits of it that we can access in different ways. Could you now turn that, if possible, into a kind of figure of 8 against the floor, if that makes sense? So it's hard for me to teach this verbally, and it's probably very hard for you to see it in the video. But what I'm doing is I'm lifting one hip, reaching it over, then lifting the other hip, reaching it out to the side, lifting the other hip, reaching it out to the side, the other hip. And there feels like a kind of figure of 8 being drawn. A sideways figure of 8, that might help, or an infinity symbol. Do your best. And if you can't get the figure of 8, just move your hips in kind of circles against the floor, or any random movement you like. And notice how that affects the tissues of the pelvic floor, all of them, the genitals as well as the musculature. These are areas that it is really important to stay connected to for keeping an eye on things, but also not alienating bits of our body from our consciousness. Let's, if you can at all, reverse the figure of 8 and notice what feels yummy about this, because even non-sexually, I think a lot of our pleasure comes from our hips. If you think of the way that people naturally dance in pretty much every culture, and dancing is really an expression of pleasure and the body moving in ways that it's enjoying naturally in response to music. So I think it's fair enough to think of our hips as an area where we can feel pleasure without it having to be sexual. What is it like to feel the movement of your belly, your buttocks, your hips, and all the bits and bobs? And then come back to stillness and notice what you notice. Maybe there's a little movement still going, or maybe you are still. And just feel your body breathing and your presence to your body. And when you feel ready, you can choose to just do Shavasana or soles of the feet together, knees wide, and cushions under the legs, and a very floor-based, or blocks under the legs, a floor-based reclining cobbler. Just if you're kind of feeling like you're in the zone and you don't want to disturb yourself to get lots of props. But if you also really want a lot of props, I'll show you quietly the reclining cobbler, which is to elevate one end of your bolster to sit at the bottom of the bolster, to lie back on the bolster, and to put cushions and blocks at generous propping under the thighs and shins, to put blankets on, to turn off lights, or put an eye pillow on, or a sock over your eyes. Anything that makes you feel softly supported, thoroughly supported. And as you inhale, imagine again this breath traveling to the pelvic floor, or to the pelvis, to the basin of the pelvis. So that as you inhale, it's almost softly ballooning the pelvis. But as you exhale, instead of what's truly happening, which is that the pelvic floor is toning, could you imagine that the exhale is traveling out through the pelvic floor softly? Breathing in, the breath travels to the deep basin of the pelvis, and exhaling, the breath softly releases out through the soft pelvic floor. Breathing in, the breath feeds and fills the pelvis, and exhaling, the breath softens out through the pelvic floor. Stay with that breath practice for as long as you feel able to stay focused on your breath.
Softening the thighs, the buttocks, the belly. Melting the shoulders. Softening the jaw. Broadening the space between the eyebrows. And really feeling your weight. Allowing yourself to surrender. And take a moment to notice the space all around you. So much space through the walls, out into the air, above you, to the sides, all around you. There is space through into the air and out over the roads and fields and towns. Space all around you, all the way to the ocean and all the way into the universe. Picturing all that space, could you imagine great space deep inside your brain? Great space between your thoughts. Look for the spaces in your brain. And then become again aware of the supports beneath you, that which you are lying on, maybe blankets that are supporting you by keeping you warm. And noticing your physical body and the shape that you're making. The touch of fabric, the touch of air, maybe sounds that you can hear or smells that you can smell. Maybe noticing the lights behind your eyes, changing lights and colors. And you're welcome to stay there as long as you like. And hopefully if you're staying for a while, you'll remember these suggestions for when you do decide to take yourself back to the world. And those suggestions would be to take your time breathing deeply for a while. Take some time maybe moving a little bit the way your body wants to move. Take some time perhaps looking around the room from where you are, or perhaps from sitting. And take some time sitting as a kind of halfway house between this moment of deep connected peace, which I hope is what you're moving towards, and the requirements of you to take you through the next part of your day. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May you be well. May you be free from harm. May you progress where possible. May you find ways to sit at ease with the rest. Om Shanti, Namaste. Rest well if you're still there. And take it easy. And I'll see you in 2 weeks, those of you who are joining me live. Night, night.